Hi guys, this is our first video for data management. I've made a couple for advanced functions already. Trying my best to keep us informed during this very strange time in education. So basically what I'm doing, I'm sitting in my daughter's bedroom. She has a whiteboard on her board, so I'm going to use this and do the best that I can to try to explain some of the concepts. So for this week, I'm going to try to get through the first 4 lessons of Chapter 3, which is the beginning of statistics. So the first 4 lessons are fairly straightforward, just take a little bit of explaining. I'm going to do it in 2 videos. I'm going to do the first 2 lessons together and then the second 2 lessons together. And from there we should be able to keep track. I'll post the homework that's associated with them and we can go from there. Okay, so everything is posted online for you to print. You can print all 8 lessons if you want right away so that you have them ready. If you didn't bring a textbook home right before March break, then you'll have to use the online textbook. But everything is pretty much online these days anyway, so you can link to that through the D2L page as well. Okay, so in terms of statistics, the first thing that we should be aware of is there are different types of data that you can collect. And this unit is really leading us into our culminating project, which you will go about and find some data on your own and start to analyze it. So the second half of this unit is actually analyzing the data. The first half is just figuring out what the data is all about. So first thing is when you collect data, you will either collect qualitative or quantitative data. So this is sort of elementary school type stuff. Qualitative is something descriptive. What is your favorite type of ice cream, say? Strawberry, vanilla, chocolate, something where you're getting word answers. Quantitative data is numbers. Okay, so that's where you're looking for anything that's going to give you a value back. Now the value can be discrete, which is an integer value. How many oranges are in your fridge? 1, 2, 3, 4. Continuous data, it starts to include all rational numbers. So if you're looking for how much milk is in your fridge right now, yes, you could say 1 carton, 2 cartons, or 3 cartons, but if you were putting it in terms of milliliters or liters, it might not be an integer, right? It could be a portion. So that's something we would consider continuous data. Same with your age, it's always changing, so it's continuous. You're not exactly 17, you're not exactly 18. There's days and months in there as well, and portions of days. So that's something that we would consider continuous age. Okay, discrete is whole number. That's what an integer is, values. Okay, when you actually go about getting data, there's 2 types of data you could get. One is called a primary source of data, and that's the data you collect yourself. So that means that you have handed out a survey, you have gotten the results back, and you are going to analyze your own data. Secondary data comes from another source, so that can come from something verified on the internet, something like Stats where someone else has done a larger scale study. When we do studies in this class, we're going to keep it to 30 to 50 people. Not a very big sample size, a very, very small study, and probably not that accurate. You have to look to secondary sources to see, has someone else already studied this? And if someone has already studied it, what kind of results did they get? How did they compare to the results I did when I did a small sample? Okay? Now, when you take a primary sample, you can either take a small sample or you can look at the entire population. An entire population, just if we were just sticking to St. John's and we wanted to just survey people at St. John's, if you wanted to do a population sample, you would have to survey every single student registered at St. John's. That would be the population. If you wanted to do a smaller scale thing, you would just take a sample. And in a sample, you're hoping to be fairly representative. So you would have to have some grade 9, some grade 10, some grade 11, some grade 12, some grade 13s. You would have to have some males, some females. You would have to split it into groups and make sure it's fairly representative. Okay, it's a smaller portion, but it is of the population. Want to come say hi? Come here.
Hi.
This is my daughter, Morgan. She's just coming to say hi, see what we're doing, right? You're doing work on your computer? We're trying to homeschool and teach you guys at the same time. Okay, Morgan, whoa. All right, now the biggest thing that is gonna be confusing about this next little section is how do we get a sample that is fairly representative? So a fairly representative sample, you can use a variety of methods, and that's where we go to in the second lesson. Okay, so the first lesson was talking about different types of data. There's more listed in the note that you can read about. These are the main ones that I wanted to focus on. And then from here, we're going to go into lesson 2, which is now talking about types of sampling. Okay, and this, I'm telling you because I've taught this a bunch of times, is where people sometimes get confused. Okay, so types of sampling will go like this. Let me grab. Okay, so under sampling techniques, okay, we can have the first one, simple random sample. The second main one I want to go over, and there's going to be more systematic. Third one, there is destructive listed here. You can take a look at that on your own. I want to look at the ones that are going to cause the most problems. Cluster sampling. Multi-stage sampling. And the last one I want to go over, which I'm not sure you can see here, is going to be called stratified. Okay, so all of these are listed on the web page, on the note, with explanations, but I just want to go over a couple just to make sure we fully understand what's happening. So in terms of simple random sampling, this is the draw it out of a hat method. This is if you had an entire population and you could put, if we were talking about St. John's and you could put everyone's name in a big box, and then you just randomly, if you wanted to survey, say at SJC, we have 1,000 students, and in your sample, you want to get exactly 100, you would put them all in a box in this case and start picking them out one at a time. Okay? Whether it's their names, whether it's student numbers. So this is kind of the, we call it out of a hat method. It's completely random in the simplest way. Okay? You are not leaning towards more grade 9s, you're not leaning towards more grade 12s. You are shaking up the box full of 1,000 names and you're pulling one out at a time. That's what a simple random sample is. Okay, systematic sampling. What? Yeah, Megan and Gracie are gonna watch. Okay. In systematic sampling, you're now splitting it into intervals. So if we take this exact same thing and we say, okay, we have one, the formula that you're going to use is the interval equals your population size over your sample size. So in our case, we have 1,000 people at St. John's, say. We want to sample 100 of them. That means we want to survey every 10th person. Okay, sampling every 10th person means we have to line them up in some way, whether it's alphabetically, whether it's by student number, and we pick a random number between 1 and 10, let's say 7, and then from there we sample every 10th person. Okay, so if you have 7, then you're going to go to 17, then you're going to go to 27, then you're going to go to 37, so on and so forth. By the time you continue to go every 10th person, before you get to the number 1,000, so it'll end at 997, you will have exactly 100 people. Okay, and that's by starting at the 7th, some random number you selected between 1 and 10, knowing that's your interval size, and then adding 10 each time. Okay, that is called systematic. It has a little bit of math in it, which means you have to know your population size, you have to know the sample size you want to take, you have to figure out how many, what your interval is, and then you have to select a random number between 1 and 10. You could use a random number generator on your computer or on your phone, or you could just select whatever number, ask someone to pick a number between 1 and 10 and start there. Okay, so this is a little more mathematical. You have to have people in some sort of order though, so whether it's alphabetical or it's by student number, we'd have to use that. Okay, the next one, which is called cluster sampling, and all of these are going to involve putting people into groups first. So the next three, Morgan, can you please, just for a minute. Okay, putting people into groups first. So when you put, let's say our groups that we want is by grade. So we're going to have grade 9s, grade 10s, grade 11s, grade 12s, and then grade 13s. Okay? If you do that in all the next three types of samples, you'll see what the difference is for each of these. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. These three are all related, but they are all slightly different. So when you look at cluster sampling, the idea of cluster sampling is you will randomly select a couple of the clusters. So say we randomly select the grade 9s and the grade 12s, and then you survey everyone in that cluster. Okay, so it's not super representative because you're missing entire groups. You're missing all the grade 10s, you're missing all the grade 11s, you're missing all the grade 13s. But you are getting every single person in cluster of grade 9s and every single person in the cluster of grade 12s. Now, multi-stage is exactly what it sounds like. You're going to do 2 stages of sampling. So again, you randomly select 2 groups. Sometimes they're called strata. So again, randomly select grade 9 and 12. And then from there, you do a simple random sample of a couple people in each. Okay, so it's 2 stages of sampling. You've done a random sample to select grade 9 and 12, and then you've done a random sample within grade 9 and 12. Okay, the last one is called stratified, probably the best method you could possibly use. You put people into groups, again, grade 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, and then you take a proportional sample from each of the grades. So imagine, again, at St. John's we have 1,000 people. So imagine we have 250 grade 9 students, 250 grade 10 students, 200 grade 11, 200 grade 12, and 100 people in grade 13. Okay, imagine that's what we're looking at here. Now, in order to find an exact proportion of these, we want to take some from grade 9, some from grade 10, some from grade 11, some from grade 12, some from grade 13. But we don't want the same number in grade 13 as we do in grade 9 because there's so many more grade 9s. We want that to be representative. That's the key. Your sample has to be representative. So if I survey as many grade 13s as grade 9, then their voice isn't heard to the same proportion it should be. So again, you have to say, I have 1,000 people. I want to survey 100. So you want to survey 10% of the population. You can figure that out by doing 100 divided by 1,000. Okay, so 10% of the population, which means in each of your strata, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, you want to survey 10% of those people. So if I survey 10% of 250, I get 25. If I survey 10% of 250 again, 25, 20, 20, 10. If I add up all those numbers, I get the 100 people I want. So I do a simple random sample, somehow, out of the hat method of the 250 grade 9s, randomly sample 25. Of the 200 grade 12s, randomly sample 20. I still get my 100 people sampled, as I did in all of these methods. I just do it in a much more balanced way.
I already learned about graphing.
You learned about graphing?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to come say something? Okay, so that should kind of take care of the sampling methods. There is something called convenience sampling, voluntary sampling, destructive sampling. You can read through those and get the gist of them yourselves. These ones I thought they could use some explanation. Morgan's going to show you what book she's reading for homeschool.
Puppy.
All about puppies. What was that one called? Mocha and?
Bitsy.
Mocha and Bitsy. Okay, so if you're looking for a book, pick up Mocha and Bitsy. Okay, I'll be back with lesson 2
They can
coming up
already
soon.
read that.